Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. And please tell your friends and family all about the podcast. Our guest today is John Parra. He's here to celebrate his new picture book, Growing an Artist. Before we invite John into the studio to talk about growing an artist, we would love for you to join our growing social media community. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Reading With Your Kids on TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We would also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can sign up for our free newsletter. You can also use the contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing great here on the podcast, let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading With Your Kids podcast. Join us right now from Queens in New York City. Our guest is returning to the show. He has a brand new book out. It's called Growing an Artist. Please welcome to the show our friend John Parra. Hey, John, how are you?
Oh, very well. Thank you very much, Jed.
Happy to have you back. Excited to have you back. I love the title of your book, Growing an Artist. Tell us all about it.
Well, I mean, it's my first book that I actually wrote and illustrated. So I wrote the story, and it's a semi-autobiographical account of when I was young and I used to work for my father. And the story starts off with a little boy who's really excited to go spend the day with his dad at his work, who's a landscape contractor. And the little boy is also an artist and likes to draw, so he brings along a sketchbook with him. And so they go through their day, and they have many adventures, some setbacks, but also adventures. And he starts to see, I think they kind of learn from each other. So it's a great father and son sort of story. But the father sees a lot in the son, and the son sees a lot in the father about their creativity, about what they care about in what they do, about feeling having pride in the work that they do. And at the end of the book, and then as the story progresses, they work together and they develop this kind of landscape plan together, and then they get the big job, and it's and then they start seeing how you can be, so it's sort of like a lesson about being creative and how you can have ideas, but also how you can now turn those dreams and creativity into something that's real, and telling stories, so the little boy is learning how to tell the stories about that. And so I think it's just a really wonderful kind of story for me. I mean, it's a very personal story, obviously, but I think it's just a very universal themes I think it has, and about teaching about creativity and kind of following through and making your dreams real. And there's also other themes woven into it, about Hispanic and Mexican culture and language, about a little bit about food, also overcoming, things that maybe other people might not see you in the way that you expect. Mm-hmm. But you kind of have to persevere and keep going, and there's much more good in the world, and you kind of have to hopefully look for that instead. So, so that's kind of like what the book is. So.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that hit me right away when you're talking about your dad being, a landscape, I forget if you use a contractor. Yeah. They are artists. And that is not something that I fully appreciated until later in life. And I think that might have been something you were talking when you mentioned that sometimes people don't see you as the way you see yourself. And I think there's a lot of jobs in the world where people are very creative, that people don't recognize that creativity and that these people doing these jobs are actually artists in their own right.
Yeah, yeah. And not only just in the plants and the designs of the work. I mean, he's actually, I have a couple of his old plans that I found and that he worked on. I'm sorry, you can't see a little bit of those things. And I actually did work on some of his landscape plans. This is when I was working for my father. I did these little color drawings, and my dad was an artist too. So he used to draw, and these were some of his, there we go, sketches that he used to do. And, so he loved art. In fact, he was one of the first artists that I actually knew growing up. So he would draw for my brothers and I, and he was inspiring to us, and he would tell stories when he was drawing, and so not only I mean, just as a personal reference, that I think that really influenced me a lot growing into an artist. And so I think showing that both of them are actually artists kind of in the book, if you pick up these themes and cues in the story, that they are artists and they're telling their stories. And it's a very sort of sweet and sort of empowering, also just very powerful thing that you can be, with your creativity, you can become something, and share something with the world and tell these stories. I think that was my goal anyway. So it's my first time writing. So, but I had lots of help, and the editors were great. So they really helped me out with this one.
Well, I love it. It seems like lately I've been not only kind of noticing the kind of lessons we can teach our kids when sitting down and reading a book like Growing an Artist Together, but I also see the lessons that a parent can take away from reading the book with their kids. And, one of them is just this whole idea that a lot of artists kind of grew up with. I've heard, I experienced it myself. I heard from other people, the parents, they want their best for the kids, but they just can't wrap their heads around how are you going to make a living as an artist. And, maybe you want to do that on the side, but you got to get a job with a phone company right now. I love that this is going to be able to give parents an opportunity to kind of sit back and think, well, maybe I can encourage this artistic streak in my kid.
And I would say it's worth encouraging, no matter where your kids kind of sort of end up in life, because there's been studies where some of the most successful people in business or in science or in government have grown up with a talent or a hobby as, something creative. And they say that that's a very it just makes you think outside the box. It makes you problem solve better. I always teach kids, it's not just make it a part of your life, or anybody, kids or adults as well. Just make it a part of your life. I think you feel better. I think you problem solve better. I think you're solving things differently, and that will contribute to your success in life. No matter what you do, whether it is an artist or, whatever profession you choose. So to me, there's so much more benefits of having that creative part of you that can be nurtured. And as a parent, I think, I always try to, we have a granddaughter now, and we're always encouraging her to read and to read books, and also but draw and paint and think creatively and write stories, just so she can start thinking in that sort of way, problem solving way.
Do you think that a lot of the success that those people who were creative in their younger years experience is because when they were younger, they found out that they could take this thing that only they saw in their head and they could bring it to life and make it real?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, that's what entrepreneurship is kind of based off of, seeing something that doesn't exist yet and creating it. I mean, I read the Steve Jobs autobiography. I can't say that word right now. So terrible with words sometimes. Biography. And he was talking about how he was influenced by taking hand lettering classes in college, although he wasn't in the school very long. But he was fascinated by just the calligraphy classes and things like that, and the hand lettering, and how that became part of the Apple signature line. Before it was just those kind of blocky text type looks on the computers, and he wanted to make it beautiful. And I think, I mean, that's a very, big example of how creativity influences in all areas of work, but I think it happens even in small things, in small ways, in everyday life. And it really makes life kind of special and meaningful.
Yeah. I am very, very thankful that I was somewhat creative as a kid, and I was able to see this beautiful woman that I met would one day go out with me on a date, and she did, and then we fell in love, and we've been married for 33 years.
Congratulations.
How was it for you taking that step to become an author for the first time? You've illustrated dozens and dozens of books and really helped tell the story through those stories through your pictures. But this is a different thing, going out and sitting down and putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboards, I guess.
Yeah, this was sort of definitely a different experience. I never considered myself a writer. I was always a visual also learner when I was growing up. So to me, writing was very intimidating. But, and I, from the encouragement from my publishers and my agent, they said, well, why don't you just start writing some ideas down and let's see what we can come up with. And my agent, Adriana, was saying, what about with the story about your dad, working with your dad? And, the more I started thinking about it, I said, you know what, there's a lot of really great stories in that, that experience that I had, and connected with art and with work and with creativity and just at different levels. And when I started writing that story, it just flew out of me. It just sort of just poured out of me. And I wrote way more than I needed. I mean, not finished text, obviously. Mm-hmm. It definitely needed to be edited down and fixed and sort of arranged correctly. But, that story was, I guess it just came from a place special in my heart and that I wanted to share. And it just was, so it was a really positive experience, coming up with that story. And thankfully the publishers, liked it. And then we started, getting down and working on it and putting this part over here and this should be over here. And then that way, it flows better. Cause I wanted the story, it wasn't a vanity project. I wanted to make sure this was a story that people could read and enjoy no matter who they are, where they come from, and just sort of like, yeah, I get those ideas, and with universal themes and positive messages that, about growing into an artist, or about, things like this.
Yeah. And it sounds like a really, really sweet story about you and your dad's relationship. And I know that father-son relationship can be a little bit weird sometimes and strange, but it sounds like you guys just had something that was really special.
He was the best. He was the greatest, a great father. And he was not just, I also, I worked for my father for 12 years, but he also was our coach in Little League. He was also, we'd also hang out. We'd go camping together. He was almost like our, especially when we got older, he became almost like another brother type role, where he was just, he understood us, and he kind of gave us our space, my brothers and I, to grow into our own individual selves, and respected that, but also, offering guidance and, and being sort of that, role model. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, I still think of my father and as memory, and think of him as a role model and who I want to be in life.
We shared with us, the kind of process and the challenges that you felt as writing this book for the first time. Was illustrating your story different?
Well, I kind of approach it the similar way that I do most of my books. I start with the research. I try to go back, do my homework. I get all the vehicles, all the plants, all the scenes. I knew where I wanted the setting to look. I had very specific ideas of what the book, there were very specific things about the book. So I gathered all the information together like I normally would. and I picked the colors that reminded me of those kind of garden magazines you sometimes find at the the Home Depots or garden stores or wherever it is you go to buy plants. And so it has that sort of flavor to it. I also contacted the California Landscape Contractors Association, where my father was actually, I found out he was president of his local chapter for a couple of years. And, because I needed to get that information. I wanted to find out, well, what was his role? Because I did remember him giving speeches and being a part of some sort of organization when I was young, but I wasn't really aware of what his role was in the organization. So, I did my due diligence and started sketching and doing the artwork for it. And it came along, and most of the pages went pretty smooth. I think it came along really well. And I'm very proud of the artwork in this, for sure. I really wanted to outdo myself in a sense, like try to push myself as hard as I could to make sure that this was something that obviously was important to me. So I had to make sure that the writing and the artwork were equally had equal amount of importance. And if I had to make it just a little bit better, and I could, I would. It was just I wouldn't. It wasn't something I could kind of gloss over, for sure. Not that I do anyway. I don't usually anyway. So.
Now, this might sound like a weird question, but is there a particular illustration in this book or spread that is really special to you?
Well, I think the one that I like a lot recently is the one where the father and the son are working together on the landscape design plans together, and that really sort of hits home, obviously, but it's just sort of special because this is the moment where they're working together. They're seeing almost each other as equals, and they're coming together, and they're being creative together. And it's so exciting for me, because at first it's just the son following the father at his work and kind of learning from the father. But now it's really like they're really getting together and making something and becoming something creative and special. So I think that's just kind of a special moment. I mean, there are other special moments in the book, but I kind of like that one. And just seeing the drawing, which is like what I do. It's just seeing the kids draw. Was it
difficult emotionally to, when you're bringing back that memory of, this is the first time my dad is kind of seeing me somewhat as an equal, and did that kind of bring up back some pretty strong emotions?
I felt very proud. I mean, it was like, wow, it's like, that, because it was a real story. I mean, 95% of the story is true, and there was only certain things adjusted and, certain names and characters, maybe, adjusted, but 95, I would say, % of the story is what I did. And I just felt proud. I think I was just like, wow, I did this and I worked with my father, and I was proud that I could help my family and contribute to my family. And it was fun and it was interesting. And it was like, I did like it. I did really, learn a lot from it and appreciate it. And those lessons that I learned from him in working hard and being professional and being dedicated and learning your craft, I've taken to what I do as a professional artist. So I think if I attribute my success, for sure, has to do with those early memories and days of those experiences with my father working for him.
Yeah. So people can't see this, but I am seeing you're beaming. You as you're speaking about your dad, as you're speaking about this book and this story, you're absolutely beaming. There's so much joy and pride, and it's really wonderful to see.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm super and proud of this book. I really am. I think this is probably one of my strongest projects that I've worked on, and I feel very proud of the work that I've done on it, for sure. And again, it's just a very personal, meaningful book, but again, a universal story, a universal theme that anybody can enjoy, that it's got great, great lessons and great messages and great, good stuff in there. And I think that's I feel very excited to share it now because it just came out this week, and I'm really happy to share it.
Yeah. If there's a dad out there or an uncle or, somebody's listening and they want to really support their kid's creativity, but they're not an artist. They don't see themselves as an artist. They're doing a retail job, and they can't see themselves in the same way as your dad. How can that person encourage their kids to be creative?
It's like when I do school visits, I tell the students, like if you're interested in art or if you're interested in music or writing stories or whatever it is that you like to do, make sure your parents know. Because what happened was, it's like, yeah, my parents didn't, maybe they weren't artistic or something like that. If they were, my dad, I was pretty artistic, and my mom used to like to write. But what they did was their encouragement helped me. And every birthday I would get markers, pens, paper to work with. And I had a place in my home. So I always tell people, make sure you have a place where you can work and everything's there and everything's set up so you can start to work on things. It's not take it a little seriously, where it's set up, and that encouragement helps me, so those are the things I would say. You don't have to know art to encourage your kid, just again, and it's not expensive to buy markers and pens and paper. It's pretty cheap, and also take it to the museums. My mom was to take it to the museums, to art museums, to the natural history museums, because other things inspire us, other things make us creative. Music concerts, walking through a forest on a hike or something like that. That could be a teaching moment, or a moment where they could pull out a sketchbook and start drawing, landscapes. I was always drawing landscapes when I was young. I love doing landscapes. And so all those things, it's not just one thing that inspires you. It's not drawing to draw. It's drawing what you are inspired about in life, and whether that's people or the environment or the nature or animals or plants or whatever it is. Those are the things that kind of is the beginning spark that goes into the drawing and the artwork. Yeah. And I think that's the most interesting thing, part of it.
I love the two things I love about what you just said, that encouraging your kids to notice and take note of the things around them and get excited about them and find inspiration in them. And I also love the idea of encouraging parents to help their kids set up their little studio, their little art studio, even if it's just a little corner of their desk. Yeah, calling it, that's your studio. And I think it's one of those kind of magical phrases that can really help a kid see themselves in a different way.
Yeah, and especially when, I remember when I was young, I felt like I was very introverted and quiet, and verbally I think I was just, I wasn't strong suited towards that. But visuals, that was my voice, and that was where I got my confidence from too, because visually all my friends in class would, you're the class artist. You do this. They'd see me working on something and they'd get excited. And I gained a lot of confidence also. And I gained a lot of how to, share my ideas was through pictures. Because that was the way I preferred to communicate. Yeah. And, so I think it's just a way to reach kids. Some kids just learn differently also. It's like you can reach a kid through visual learning, also. It's not, there's no cookie cutter way to, for kids' success, I think. And the arts can be a very successful way for them to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if they're not making a living at it, it can bring great joy.
Yeah, I just say, just make it a part of your life. Yeah. No matter what happens in the future, that's another conversation, if you want to become a professional artist, but make it a part of your life and it'll change who you are. You will feel better. You will think differently. You will be more creative and problem solve better. And that only leads to success as far as I'm concerned. So,
yeah, absolutely. My beautiful wife, after retiring from teaching after 34 years, is now taking watercolor classes and is loving it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, John, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about growing an artist and also find out more about you.
Well, they can go to my website, johnparraart.com, and also you can find links to my book there, or also on the Simon & Schuster, the publisher of the book, Growing an Artist. You can find it there on their book, or where other people sell books in bookstores and online. So it's there.
Yeah. And we really want to encourage folks to support their local and independent bookstore. So just give them a little ring and say, hey, do you have Growing an Artist by John Parra? If not, could you order it for me, please? And I know they'll say
and I think it was on the indie list that the book made it on the indie list. So it should be in a lot of the indie bookstores for the month of May. So
awesome.
The top 10 picture books.
Well, we've had a wonderful time speaking to the author and illustrator of Growing an Artist, John Parra. Hey, John, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be celebrating Father's Day with Brian Biggs, as he'll be celebrating his beautiful book, My Hero. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love for you to be a guest here on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, it doesn't cost a thing, and it gives you the chance to tell the world about your book in a long-form conversation. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, and scroll on down to be a guest. Hey, when you click that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, you'll also be able to scroll down to learn how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. And if they believe your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. Oh, you can also find out about our monthly promotion program. We will celebrate your book with commercials here on the podcast, with messages to our 94,000 plus social media followers, display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards, and have your book present at whatever live events we happen to be participating in that particular month. Again, readingwithyourkids.com, authors click here button at the top of the page. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, John Parra. Please be sure to check out Growing an Artist. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contreras, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.